Hey friends, off here again with the Louisville ProActivist Report. Down here at Seneca Park today, walking the track. It's kind of a cold, dreary day, but you know, it's election season. We gotta get some interviews out. So I've got a great guest with me here today, walking the track, make the drove up from Lawrenceburg.
Yep.
All right. So I have here with me Dustin Burley.
What's going on?
Dustin is running for state representative in District 53. So how are you today?
Good.
I appreciate you coming on. So let's talk about District 53. Just to, for those who don't know, what areas are included in District 53?
Let's see. I have everything in Anderson County, which is 14 precincts. I have all 14 precincts in Spencer County. Some people know it as Taylorsville. And 2 precincts in Mount Washington, that is on the line of Jefferson County. So my district is mostly rural. I think Mount Washington is probably the most urban out of all of them. Spencer County is growing at a rapid rate because people are moving out of Louisville and moving into there because of the cheap land. Also, Anderson County, we have a lot of people that move there because of state government. So we have a lot of people from Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, because our property values are cheap there too. And we're right next to the Capitol, so, Plus, we're 25 minutes from Lexington on one part of my district, and the other part is 15 to 25 minutes from Louisville.
That's a pretty big area there. So when you talk to people down there in District 53, what are some of the things they're telling you as far as what would they like to see happen? What are some of the issues that you all are facing?
Well, healthcare, of course, because of coronavirus, and plus rural America, we don't have a lot of hospitals. So the nearest hospital for some people is 30 plus minutes, depending on what part of the counties you live on and which closest counties have a hospital. Also education. I mean, we don't really have a economic base that, like factories and stuff, so, most of our dollars come from property taxes from individualized people, so, it kind of puts a burden, especially on our seniors, because they will have to pay the most with what little money they get. Also, there's not a lot of jobs, so a lot of people have to drive outside the district because we don't have public transportation. Just everyday stuff that, health, childcare. If elected, I'll be the first childcare worker elected. So with 2,000 plus daycares closed across the state, and even in my district, we have very few because we don't have enough workers. We have nobody to watch the kids, so a lot of people can't go to work. So people have cut back at home to, make up for that, income that's lost because somebody has to stay at home with the kids. So that's the main problem with not only with the coronavirus, but our economy as a whole, because it doesn't support everyday working people.
All right, so sticking with District 53, you're running as a Democrat, correct?
Yes.
So who are you up against? Are you up against an incumbent?
Yes.
Or what's the situation there? And tell us about this person a little bit.
Representative Tipton, James Allen, for most people that live in the district. He has been the incumbent for 3 terms. Our county, I think, is the biggest out of the district, but we haven't been represented in Frankfort by anybody in 10 years. So it's always been somebody outside of Anderson County who's actually represented us. So with the stuff that's going on with pensions, with the sewer bill, he offered HB 151, I think that's what it was, during the session a couple years ago. He also voted for stripping prevailing wage and voted for right to work, giving money to charter schools, making charter schools more accessible in the state instead of local control. Right now we have a bridge out on 44 which splits Anderson and Spencer, so that has not been fixed. And I don't care who you are, I drive that bridge quite a lot and it's been falling apart for years. So to me, it's just a lack of priorities across the whole district. Plus we have like county roads that are sides of this walk track. And for real, trying to get a truck or a trailer down these roads are off the wall. And we just ain't had no leadership to fix it. Because a lot of people, you know, he's a really nice guy. I mean, we're cordial, but we just don't agree on policy.
It's one of those things we were talking about off camera a minute ago, civility kind of over policies, and it's all well and good to be nice, but if you're not actually working for the people, what does it mean? So before we get into your policies, let's just talk about you and your background a little bit and how you came to run in this race. So kind of what's your ties to the area, and you know, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's see. My family has been there, golly, my mom's side has been there way a long time ago. I know way before I was even thought about and she was thought about. Also, I grew up in Frankfort. We moved to Lawrenceburg. I've been there since 5th grade. It's never wanted to move out of rural America. Went to school to be a teacher, but because of certain people's bias, they feel like gay people can't be in the classroom. I decided to go into childcare, which I like it, love it. I mean, I've done retail, I've done factory work, fast food, and I think that's what's wrong with the problem of just elected officials, period. You can't expect somebody to understand what working on minimum wage is if you never worked it. You never understand what 12-hour shifts are if you never stood on a concrete factory floor and worked 7 days a week. With Corona going on right now, they raised our ratios at the daycare. So instead of having 10 2-year-olds, you can have up to 15 now by yourself. So changing 15 diapers, trying to potty train and educate kids, you can't do that. So these people don't understand what real people face because they're usually retired. They usually don't have to really worry about getting their kids up and going to work and doing all the things that basic people have to do. But, you know, people that are my age are struggling. So what do? They move out of rural America, and that leaves a hole in the community because now those kids won't build houses there. They won't build a tax base. And so the sad part is there's very few between young people in these areas. So that is why change needs to happen, because if not, most of the economic development will be on property owners that live there that are seniors and stuff.
So speaking of the rural community and kind of obstacles people face, what's it been like for you being black and gay running for a district seat in a rural community? Have you had any issues with that or any pushback?
If I have, it's been in private. I mean, nobody's going to say, hey, don't go vote for a black gay man in public. I mean, that's just something that a lot of people are not going to do, because I'm definitely petty and I'll call them out. But, I mean, when you drive around my district, you'll see that there's a state senate race, because District 7, because my district crosses 3 senatorial districts, which Bullitt and Spencer's not up this election cycle. They will be in 2 years. Senator Carroll has retired, so his seat is open. So it's a competitive race. It's 3 people running. It's a current representative, former lieutenant governor, Janine Hampton's one of her staff, who got fired by Matt Bevin because of the whole situation with seeing if he could fire people or not. And Julian Carroll's son's running as an independent. So when you go around my district, you'll see my signs next to hers, running for state senate, and she's a Republican. Or you'll see my yard signs with Guido, who is running for county attorney, who's also a Republican, or Tiffany, who is a Democrat, who's running, or you see my signs by Trump's. So it's rural America. I mean, most people either vote for you because they know you, or they actually want to know what you stand for. I got a call from a guy from Spencer County, and he's just the sweetest thing ever, and he's a Republican. And he said most of his ballot is blue this year. And I was like, for real? And we had a good old conversation. He was supposed to call me back, but he didn't. But, you know, I get messages all the time from people who ask usually policy positions that are Republicans, which, you know, people think that's weird. But to me, people are voting for the person and not the party. So that's a change. Plus, since April, I've been doing Corona calls. I know that Representative Cheryl Lynn Seenerson in the 88th in Lexington, she's been also doing Corona calls. So, I mean, and we've just been asking people if they need anything. And you'd be surprised when people are like, yeah, we need stuff. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a D or a R to me, you know, we're all people at the end of the day.
And, you know, our politicians are elected to serve everyone regardless of party, so it's good, yeah, in theory. So let's kind of get into your policies a little bit. I want to start with one because to viewers of the show, you may look familiar. You came up to Louisville before for the UBI, Universal Basic Income March, and did a little bit of speaking there after that. So what draws you to UPI?
At the end of the day, if we can find better ways to do things, I'm all for it. Is UBI the end all be all and will solve everything? No. Will it help a lot of people? Yeah. But also, I know that there has to be people who are smarter than me that will have to dive deep and figure out, hey, how does this work? You know, to me, looking at UBI, we would get rid of unemployment. Because if something like this ever happens again, we won't need it because everybody has a basic income. We won't really need any type of assistance because everybody has a basic income plus the income that they get. So that would cut out a lot of services that are, you know, outdated, that needs to be reformed, but also antiquated. Like, it's not. So to me, it's a broad stroke of a lot of things that can be changed and can be done. You know, you don't have to, especially with the unemployment crisis, if all the 9,000 people in this unemployment group that I added myself to, just to not only try to help some of them, but see their issues and problems, they wouldn't have to wait on a check because they would already have a check. So there's a lot of tit for tat. If we actually researched and looked into, we would have a better understanding. But, you know, with a lot of new things, there's always pushback. So, you know, hopefully we have the policy people look into it and make sure, you know, this is how we can fund it and this is how we can implement it so everybody can benefit from it.
You think that's something we can get accomplished here at the state level? Because I know Alaska has a forum, but they also have, it comes from the oil up there, which we don't really have here. So what are your thoughts on that?
Which is very interesting because Sarah Palin backed the independent governor who ran, I want to say 2 years ago. Well, actually longer than that. He was up for re-election 2 years ago, but 6 years ago, she backed the independent / Democratic ticket. And the independent was running for governor, and the Democrat jumped out of the race and became his lieutenant governor and merged the ticket to save that income for people, because they were gonna, the Republican governor, her former lieutenant governor, banned it. So that was very interesting that that happened in Alaska, because, you know, a lot of people don't talk about that. I think it could happen, but we also have to have open-minded people on both sides being there to discuss issues. Right now, we just have people that are partisan. It's not really looking for a solution because leadership tells them to do one thing, and they're scared that it's not really their constituents, that somebody in their party is just going to run against them in the primary. which I think is also stupid and ridiculous, because you're there to serve the people. So if you lose your seat because of a policy position, and or a vote you took to make something better, then that's what happens. You move on. I mean, there are representatives that literally lose a seat and they run again and win again. So you never know.
Yeah. So say you win the election, what's your first policy that you're going to push for?
Well, with Corona, we are in different times than we normally would. 30-day sessions are usually what starts off everybody who gets elected in this cycle as state rep. So instead of talking about regular old issues that are broad ranging, we won't be talking about that. We'll be discussing a budget. So hopefully we pass something that I believe it needed to be done years ago. Every 5 years we take a look at the budget, but in in an off-year election. So in elections like 2021, where we have no elections, there's unless there's resignation or death, so we don't have any type of elections, and we just hammer out the revenue side of the budget. Which tax expenditures no longer are valid, because we have a whole bunch of them. Which ones work and which ones don't. Make sure we look at how the income is balanced, because there's some people 5% doesn't really hurt them financially, but some families and people it does. We could look at doing the tax code by regions and putting money back into those regions based on what revenue that they bring in. Now, I know Eastern Kentucky would suffer and Southern Kentucky, so we would have to look at ways to put jobs there so they wouldn't suffer. So, I mean, there's a lot of balanced stuff that we could do if we really wanted to.
And one of the ways to inject some cash into the budget would be statewide legalization of, legal marijuana, medical marijuana.
Agreed.
So, talk about that a little bit. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm also supported by Kentuckians for Marijuana. I think NARO sent me a survey, or I filled out a survey for them. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't smoke. But that gives revenue to people who are selling in the streets. Now they have to go buy a business license and turn in their revenue at the, every quarter to the state treasurer's office and the revenue office, which is not being done right now. They get to keep that revenue in their pocket because they're doing it illegally. Then you look at the distributors. We're going to have warehouses, just like tobacco. And guess what? We have a lot of those already open that are empty that we could reuse. We have a lot of farmers who are, struggling. And that would put a lot of them back into farming. That would bring younger people into farming that are already growing illegally in their house or in their backyard. So, I think Kentucky is last I looked, we were one of the top illegal growing states in the nation. Especially, it grows very well in Eastern Kentucky apparently, and they go up here in the mountains and chop it down and burn it all the time. So if that's the case, well, why don't we give them opportunities to make revenue out of it? Then they wouldn't be struggling. They wouldn't be on assistance. And Louisville and the Northern Kentucky Triangle and Lexington and Bowling Green and Paducah are pretty much, in Owensboro and a little bit, Pikeville are pretty much the hubs of the state when it comes to making money. So should we put all our financial woes on those areas? No. It should be all split it out. So if we can find ways that, places, especially places like mine, can make money and benefit off of it, we should. And I'm all for that. Sports betting should have been passed last session. There's no reason why Damon Thayer held it up, which he is up for re-election and running against a guy who I think is a manager of a meat counter at Kroger, who's an average day person, Jason. There's no reason why that revenue was held up, and that's jobs. Also, gambling should have been legalized years ago. I mean, we are still having this gambling debate, and I was in high school or middle school when that started. So, there's no reason why that shouldn't happen. I mean, we could look into supporting minority businesses and women-owned businesses more. There's also businesses that are owned by white men that don't get supported because they think that, you know, because they're white men, that they can automatically get capital, which is false. So they also need help getting revenue, that they could create jobs. So there's a broad range we could do for everybody if we chose to.
So let's kind of move from bringing in some money to the budget to economic issues in the state and jobs. So just tell us your thoughts on, you know, the economy here, the job situation, and what you would like to see happen.
Just like, you know, Charles Booker said, from the hood to the holler, and from those in between, there's no jobs really anywhere. What bases that used to be there are gone. We have had, I think it was called Anderson Packaging. It's been closed for years. And they started sending because they had a place down there in Somerset. So they sent all their work to Somerset because they were paying those people $8-something an hour. But they were paying people in Lawrenceburg $10-something an hour. So they just moved it. So then they started losing business because they couldn't get their boxes to Cynthiana and other places where they needed to, because they cut out that middleman because they were making a little bit too much. So to me, if we're going to create jobs, we should bring in jobs that are going to pay a decent wage. Is everybody going to be able to pay 15 plus? No, it's just not realistic. In my area, do you really need a lot of that to live? It'd be nice, but in rural America, it's a little bit cheaper than living in Louisville and living in Lexington. So we have to bring jobs that actually pay benefits. You know, the healthcare debate, talking about how, you know, people should have healthcare. Well, every job should require it, you know, but they don't. And if you work at a job that doesn't pay you good wages, why? I mean, taking that money out of your check is not going to help you out any, so you're not going to get it. So we have to make sure that's affordable, but we also have to look at the area. My area is really rural. There's a few factories, and we have a tech school. So why aren't we redoing the tech school so that we can bring in industry through the tech school so people are trained for those jobs? But we're not. It's just there. We also send our kids to vocational school in my county to Harrodsburg, which is, you know, they've been doing it for years. But why don't we take them to the tech school, which would save gas, and they can get associate's degree quicker from there than a certificate or a diploma at the tech school. So we have to look at ways to cut costs, but also use our resources efficiently, which we don't. I mean, when we create jobs, yes, they're in urban areas, but then the urban areas have to pay for the rural areas. Or, you know, Mitch McConnell said in the debate with Amy McGrath, talking about how people enjoy driving from eastern Kentucky to Georgetown to work at Toyota. They don't enjoy that. No. You know how much gas that is?
Time away from family and everything.
When you talked about prevailing wage, most of those people were carpenters and electricians and plumbers. So now they got, you know, they went from $30 an hour to 15 less. So now they weren't going to do that 100-mile drive or however many long hours they had to drive to get to place to work. So now they had to look for something local. Or a lot of them would start claiming disability because they had no other options, because we as the government chose not to. So that's why we have to have somebody who actually hits a time clock, that, you know, understands working people's, you know, what's going on, than somebody who's retired and ain't got to work no more.
So kind of what sector, what part of the state, or you know, what do you see as the biggest potential we have for income in the state and for jobs? Do you think it's from cannabis legalization, or like ecotourism, or something else? You know, what are your thoughts? Where can we grow at?
Well, legalizing marijuana would give a lot of farmers jobs regardless. It would open up, cannabis shops across the state. It's been going on in every other state but ours that has legalized it. In rural America, we have a lot of people who like to work outside. They like to work with their hands. So we could bring in industries that, that are in states that, their taxes are not as nice to them as ours would be. But we have to create that base. We also have to look at, there are, we could do phone, what's those places called? Call centers. I did call centers for, what was it called? Florida Blue, which was the Medicare expansion for Florida years ago. But, that was through Lexington, and that was at a call center. Well, if we had broadband access, we could have done that. I could have done that in Lawrenceburg. Or it could be done in Floyd County or Lewis County. Or, places like that need those jobs that you can do at home sometimes, and that you don't have to worry about childcare, because if you're working from home, a lot of times people can multitask their kid and other things. But until we have, affordable childcare, until we look at a broader stroke of creating jobs, we're going to still be slipping behind, and we're going to be like Mississippi and Alabama. And to me, I don't want to be like those states. Nobody is a Row Tide fan really in Kentucky. So why would I want to have our economy or even our education system be mirrored just like them?
So let's get into infrastructure a little bit. You had said that it's kind of a bridge that you drive over a lot that's kind of sketchy. But what do you think of the overall infrastructure situation in Kentucky, and do you have any plans for that?
Infrastructure, we rate really low across the nation, because we don't fund our roads and we definitely don't fund our bridges. Our senior senator is up for re-election, and the one thing he hasn't done in 34 plus years, 36, I think we're at 36, the Ben Spence Bridge, which my district, in Spencer, it dips into the 4th Congressional District, dips into my district. So they need that bridge fixed. When a big part of our GDP across the country comes across that bridge, it should have been fixed a long time ago. But we have senior senators and congressmen who've been there for years that choose not to do it. I think it was a Herald Leader did a story on Eastern Kentucky. 60% of the registered voters don't vote.
Wow.
And they have the worst water problem in the state. When your water is brown coming out of your faucet, and it looks like your kid been making mud pies outside in your sink, that's gross. That's a thing that we should be talking about. 80% of the water that goes through the pipes in Martin County don't reach their households.
What?
Yeah, they did a national story on it. A woman literally told the camera crew to turn off their camera because they were going up into a holler where she could get fresh water through the mountain, and she didn't want people to know, so they would take it.
Wow.
So, then her pool had all this fungus and mold in it that, when you don't clean your pool, that's what happens. It was more healthier than the water coming out of her pipes, which is ridiculous. When a veteran, when you asked him how long he took a bath, he's like, well, I just take diaper wipes and I wipe up, and it's been like 5 days. We shouldn't be living like this in this country.
No.
Especially in our state. For every dollar we give to the federal government, we get back over $2. Because we are a recipient state. That means we depend on the government more than anybody. Which we have put ourselves in this position because we would vote on issues that are federal and not state. So we drag ourselves down when, coronavirus is going on. The governor is trying to do what he can, which he can't fix everything. Well, where's your representative? Where's your state senators? They only want to go back into session because of the racial justice, because now they're on the hook. They don't want to alienate the FOP, so they just want to go back into session so to make the laws easier for them, which it should be a broad range. The FOP should sit down with the activists in the streets. We should come to some type of agreement, but people they don't want to do that because it's better for us to be divided than actually come together and fix stuff. So I mean, whether it's roads like this that they need to expand a little bit more so there's a bike trail for people to ride on a busy street, or if it's a small tiny country road with no guardrails on the side of it, one wrong turn or slip on the ice, you're off and way down into an embankment that, you know, nobody's ever going to see you in some of these places. And my district is not as bad as some places in the state where you'd be lost forever. But the water crisis that eventually we're going to run into, and I always say I don't want to be like, you know, some of these eastern Kentucky counties, or even Flint, Michigan, for that matter. And, you know, our representatives, the sewer bill was brought up by my opponent to actually fix waters, but you want to strip pensions. Like, how does that coalesce into fixing anything? Nothing. We were blessed some years ago to get a new water treatment plant, but most counties in our state don't have one. We don't even have plumbing in majority of my district. They're still using either those ponds where all your stuff goes out, or they're using, you know, septic tanks because they don't have sewer. There are some people still using well water in my district because they can't afford to hook up to the water lines. And, you know, it's sad that we still have to live in those times. I mean, we might as well be back into the 1930s in some places.
Right. It's like we've seen a lot of progress over the years, and then we've seen that progress get eroded away.
Exactly.
As well. So something I'd like to see some progress on is, you know, criminal justice reform, policing reform. Of course, you drove up to Louisville today, where we're about 150 days into a protest. And there's been protests around the state, you know, for Breonna Taylor and police justice, protests in Lexington, Bowling
in my
Green.
district too.
What were the protests in your district?
Spencer County had like a prayer outside of Second Baptist, I think, or it was Taylorsville Baptist or Christian. It was one of them. It was just cops there, average people, and, you know, they were praying, and that was it. But in Lawrenceburg, we had a girl who used to go to high school there, and she, you know, got a protest together, and it was at the city park. It's the green, as they call it. It's kind of like a park. It's just a green area. Has like a stage. Gotcha. And, you know, nothing was said evil about the police at all, because in rural America, I know my police officers. I literally just was eating chili with one last weekend. I mean, that's just how it goes. You know, they're kids and they know you. Like, there's nothing really weird or different about it than, you know, in an urban area where most of the cops don't live here, or they don't live in the districts that they patrol. And I also found out that was encouraged. What a lot of people don't understand, that was encouraged years ago for you not to live where you work. So there's no type of biases, which we don't talk about that part either. And I had no idea until I talked to a police officer. But in our county, it was peaceful. We walked around. Nothing really happened, but the guy who is I don't know if he's still the president of the 3% or not, he's the one who hung Bashir at the Capitol. He's in my county.
Oh, wow.
And he called his militia friends. And they literally stood at our courthouse with guns to protect a statue that nobody wanted to touch. Like, what was the purpose of that? You're bringing people whose main goal is, there's just so much animosity within that group over a piece of rock, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the history books are still around unless you live in Texas and they change it so it benefits them. But I don't understand the point and the principle was, but, you know, each their own. But I mean, at the end of the day, we have to talk about these issues. Should Breonna Taylor die the way she did? No. Should the cops arrested her and her boyfriend before they walked into their apartment? Because apparently they were outside their apartment before they walked in and they were there, but they didn't. The warrant was from January and you serve it in March. That makes no sense. Like, those are types of things that sadly we have to regulate, because to me that'd be common sense. If it's been that long, then we better start a new process. Body cams, there's a lot of pushbacks on those, which I don't understand. If you were doing everything you're doing right in the heat of the moment, period, then there shouldn't be any charges against you. You did what you're supposed to. But if you didn't, you know, same way I have to work with kids. If I do something wrong to a kid, or something falls on them and I'm not paying attention, or I'm on my phone and you can see it on the camera, guess what? I get in trouble. So what's the difference between me or anybody else? Surveillance, you know, happens. I would rather be like, hey, this, you know, the cop did what he could. The suspect took off running and he hit the cop. So yeah, the cop shot back. Okay, well, that makes sense. But if there's no footage, how we're supposed to, you know, exonerate the cop or the person too? It should be fair all the way around. But until we have this hardcore partisan divide go away, I mean, it's never going to be fixed. I mean, the states can't really do nothing with qualified immunity. That's federal. So, you know, we can only fix what we can on this level, and they need to fix what they can on that level. I mean, can we get rid of chokeholds? Yeah. I mean, I haven't really seen that done in the state, but it could happen.
Yeah.
You know, Attica Scott saying if you shoot a gun, you should be drug tested. I mean, I don't see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I worked at Lowe's. If I ran into a shelf with equipment, guess what? I'd have to get drug tested. If I showed up, you know, tipsy at work when I'm about to get on a bus to go pick up kids at school, guess what? I'm going to have to get drug tested. So I don't understand what the big deal is. If you're not doing nothing wrong, there's really nothing to, you know, but, you know, our rural police departments are different than our urban ones. I mean, that's just, plus we have county officers. A lot of people don't know that. Some counties still have your city police, your county police, and then you have your sheriffs. And there's a lot of, you know, not communication between sometimes with those branches in certain places, because, you know, somebody's uncle didn't like somebody and they're the chief, and those are the petty stuff that we have. But we also have, you know, communication problems. The radios don't work in places like mine, that, you know, you can call the force quicker on your cell phone than you can on your radio. So that puts the cops in danger, and that puts the person in danger, whoever, you know, that they're pursuing, because if they're on something and they try to react a different way and it's just the cop only has few many options when they're by themselves. So, I mean, to have incidents where it doesn't escalate to death, we should look into it and actually have a conversation. Do I know everything? No. I was endorsed by the FOP 2 years ago. It wasn't because of criminal justice reform, it's because of pensions. Now they're going to endorse one party because of criminal justice reform, which, you know, I think that we should have cops focusing on going after people who are doing, you know, sex trafficking, the hardcore drugs, and, you know, vandalizing and stuff like that, than trying to be breaking up domestic violence stuff. We should be sending, you know, cops that are trained to be social workers, or have social workers on the force. The cops are actually also doing a lot of stuff that they shouldn't be doing, because they're doing things that usually another profession would be doing, but we're making our cops do it. They can't be doing all that. So there's a lot of bipartisan support of a lot of things, but we don't have people who will sit down and talk about it. I mean, look at our correction system. It's overloaded with people that are on drugs. Why are we not putting them in treatment? Yes, let's put them through treatment and make them serve their time and make them also do stuff, I don't know, some type of punishment, if that's the case. But I mean, just keeping them locked up with drugs going in the jails and prisons. I know people who can get higher quicker in jail than they can on the streets. So we're also not talking about that. What's going on with the correctional officers? Why are they letting that happen? I mean, that makes no sense. But that's when we have to look and weed out stuff. Is it the people that work at private prisons are doing that? Or are they working at, county public jails and prisons? We don't know until we look into it. And sadly, we don't have a state auditor anymore who is tackling issues like that. I mean, Adam Edlin tackled the rape kit backlog. What's Harmon doing right now? Nothing. We have issues that have to be fixed, and he is in a position to fix it, but it's not happening. And so it's responsibility on both parts to do their jobs. But when one party is in the majority of everything right now, what are they doing? That's the question.
So does this mean you support Attica Scott's Brianna's Law bill?
I mean, I haven't read it, but, could there be some tweaks to it? Probably. Can me and Attica sit down and talk about it? Of course. But, we can't have those conversations until somebody's in that seat. My opponent won't talk about it. He championed, on his signs it says, leadership you can trust. Well, in 6 years, the first thing he campaigned on was bring jobs. He brought more dollar stores. Dollar stores located in areas where it's poor. Those are not really creating jobs. He also championed on getting rid of gay marriage. You can still get married. Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. The priorities for some people are backwards. We can't say that we are pro-life if we're not looking also into saving the victims so they can serve their time for what they're doing so they can go back to their family, and we're not also pro-life and saving the officers to make sure that they come back home at the end of the day. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
So we're about 40 minutes in, got through a lot of policies. What are some other of your main thoughts you'd like to get out there?
There was a guy who commented on the Bullitt County's Facebook page talking about that they don't understand how they can support a candidate with mental illness, because apparently being gay is a mental illness. I haven't heard that since who knows how long. But mental health in this state is outrageously ridiculous. It needs to be fixed. We have firemen, we have EMTs, and police officers that have PTSD, but we're not fixing that problem whatsoever. We're not giving them the services that they need. There are students that, when I was in school, in elementary school, one of our rotations was, I think it was library, music, PE, art, and guidance. And our guidance counselor had to be in every, during the rotation, she had every grade in every class. So she would talk about, respect, responsibility, character ed stuff. And in middle school, we had a class just dedicated to character ed. How we should be responsible, be on time, stuff like that. And those environments give kids the opportunity to come out with the problems. I mean, I have one little kid at the daycare. When you start talking about, where's your mommy and daddy? He'll say jail. And, he's 3 years old. Should he be talking about that? Should he know where his parents are? No. Or, a friend of mine has custody of 2 of his nephews. One from his wife's side, one from his side. Should that be happening? No. Because we have a lot of systemic problems that we don't fix. There are people that go to rehab to get treatment, but when they come home, their families don't know how to deal with it. So the first thing that they do is constantly over their shoulder, watching every move they do, go through their stuff. What does that do? That makes the person mad. So there's counseling that should be done all the way around. And apparently, I guess mental health is not an issue or problem to certain people, in which it is a broad problem that if we tackle that a lot of our officers won't have to deal with fighting with people with drugs on the street. We wouldn't have kids that have all these problems in school that, you know, I have kids that literally, if you just talk to them, they wouldn't do half the stuff that they did, because you would have that communication, but, you know, they'll stick a tablet or whatever in front of their face, which is sad to me that we have came to a society like that.
All right. Before we wrap it up here, I got an email, I think it was yesterday, from Charles Booker.
Mm-hmm.
And he stated that he has just endorsed you. So congratulations on that.
Appreciate it.
I looked at your page. I see you had a long list of endorsements there. So talk about some of those, if you would.
Well, this cycle has been a lot interesting. There's a lot of party involvement with certain people not receiving certain endorsements, because a lot of the back and forth that sadly it's on both sides that needs to stop. But you know, the steel workers, I was super excited about. The building trades, super stoked. Then, you know, being gay, did I get any of the gay endorsements? No. But, you know, there's 2 gay candidates across the state and none of us got those endorsements. So that's not a shock to me. Also, groups that usually support black candidates. We have 3 running across the state. I think one of them's received one group's black national endorsement instead of all 3 of us. Like, there's a lot of the stuff that a lot of people don't know that goes behind the weeds of stuff that's ridiculous to receive endorsements. Like, you know, I'm excited for the ones that I do have. Plus, there's a process. You got to fill out surveys. One survey had 80-something questions. When you work full-time, you ain't got time for that. I was working 2 jobs, and I sent in a survey late. And it was for one of my labor councils, because I have 3 in my seat. Well, one doesn't really do too well with minorities or gay people, and the other one is more open to supporting people. But one of them said a deadline is a deadline. I was working 2 jobs, and that's why I didn't turn it in on time, because I forgot. When you were your own campaign staff, I mean, you got things to do. I still got to eat and provide for myself. So what's the big deal? But I mean, there's a lot of internal stuff as Democrats we need to fix, same way with Republicans. Both sides have idiots on them. That's what I always say. And if we don't have people to fix it, like, I'm excited that we have libertarians running this cycle. There are almost as amount as libertarians running than Democrats. There's only 45 Democrats running for 119 seats, when last cycle was about 15 Democrats to 119 seats. So because we're not focusing on rural America, the libertarians are jumping in. And I think electing a libertarian would bring the change we need, because guess what? Then we have somebody different. You can't really change too much of a libertarian on either side. And it'll shake stuff up, and people need that. I mean, that's why people elected Donald Trump, because they wanted something different. Do I agree with everything he says? Definitely not. And a lot of people don't. They don't like his tweets, they don't like whatever, but they elected him because he's something different. And sometimes we have to shake stuff up to either get back to normal or change the way we do things. So, you know, I'm all about that life.
Thanks. All right. So I just want to give you a moment here, just kind of talk to my viewers, talk to the voters out there, and tell them why you should get their vote.
Well, you can go to dustinburley.net. We are less than 9 days. I literally woke up and I seen Martina Jackson's post and it said 9 days. And so guess what? There's plenty of phone calls to be done. You can go to the volunteer central on the get involved part of my page and you can make phone calls. You can go talk to your neighbor, because that's what we need to do more of. We need to communicate with each other. Also, you can get on Facebook. I think it's Dustin Burley 53rd. My Twitter is Dustin_Burley. You know, my Instagram's Burley.Dustin. I think I'm going to get them all down. But, you know, not only should you vote for me, but vote for candidates that you believe in, who's actually going to fix something, that's going to do something. Sending the same people have not fixed the problem. We shouldn't be still talking about pensions. Pension system got, you know, destroyed and tore apart in 2001, 2002, when I was in middle school. So these problems ain't been fixed. For what? We send people back who don't do anything. Why should a legislator have a pension? Why should I serve for 15 years and get free health care for being a legislator that's a part-time job when most of my constituents don't have it? Like, our county officials make more than double the income, the median income in most of these districts. Like, we have a lot of problems that we have to fix, but we have to send average people there to fix it. I mean, at the end of the day, I have as many Republicans voting for me as Democrats, and the others in the independents, because I would rather be elected by a bipartisan majority than a partisan majority, because at the end of the day, working with one side is not going to fix the problems. And as you look at states that are partisan, they don't get anything done. And that's why we have to go back to, we had a House of Democrats, a Senate, that was Republicans, and the governor switched. So we had to do something. But now we don't have to do anything. So, that's why we should do something and go outside the box. Plus, working as a child care worker, my kid's future and your kid's future matters. And if we don't fix the problems now, sadly, they're going to have these same discussions when they're 31 and 40 years old, which that shouldn't be happening. So make sure you go vote early, vote smart, and wherever you live at. And I know that in most places it's been super easy to get to the polls and in and out, especially in rural America. Now in urban areas, make sure you're going to take a lawn chair probably. So make sure you get in, get out, and make sure you wear a mask, put on gloves or whatever you need to keep safe.
All right, so yeah, this is what I talk about, people. I talk about break the duopoly. And I think it's more important to not support a party, but to support individual candidates, individual people, grassroots candidates who are out there to do work for the people who are part of the community, see the issues that are going on, and are willing to put in the work to make those changes. I think Dustin is one of those candidates. If I lived in the 53rd, you'd have my vote.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, share this out to anybody you know in the district. Help this get around, help get to know one of your candidates here. As always, I'm going to try to be on the ground interviewing these types of candidates. I focus on the grassroots candidates. I leave the big candidates to the big networks. Help support local independent media. I am local, independent, and nonprofit. So you can help spread the word just by sharing, commenting, boost the algorithms, liking, following, all that good stuff. So thanks for watching, you all. Until next time, remember, always think critically.